Hey, I'm here. I'm ready to educate you about education. Welcome, welcome. Oh, sass. Hey, Mike. So yeah, today's going to be short. I'm just going to do a little bit of the essay, and then I will open up the panel. So I went to that coffee thing yesterday, and had a lot of fun. It went really well. It was me and a couple of women. And the organizer, the lady that organized it, actually turned out to be from Louisiana. She has family in Louisiana. She has roots there. She lived there a bit, and very much, very. We had a lot of we, and it was somebody that was looking to form community out offline, like outside of the internet. And so we're looking for people to hang out in person, to do things with. We had some good conversations. We were there for 3 hours. I think it's going to be a weekly thing. So my tonight's the Toastmasters. So my attempts to form real in-person community are going pretty well so far. So it is possible, hopefully, where you are. If I can do it, I feel like it's out there for anybody. Um, so yeah, good report on that. Okay, getting. I want to dip back into this essay a little bit. We talked about we're socialized into the like okay, so growing up the default stories that I was socialized into before I had any perspective or any way to kind of criticize or think on the outside of it. Santa Claus, this guy at Christmas time, we put up a Christmas tree, we put lights on it, there was a manger, and on Christmas Eve or Christmas morning, this guy would show up to your house. He had a sleigh that was pulled by reindeers, and he would drop off all these presents that you would unwrap and with full of toys that you'd play with, and it gave magic and meaning to that holiday. And that's what was taught to us. We also had an Easter bunny. We had a tooth fairy. We had religious traditions with God, Jesus, the Virgin Mary. Those were all kind of just absorbed uncritically as the way things are. Just that was a story of existence, a story of the world, a story of the Christmas holiday, and um, everywhere you're born, you're usually probably chances are going to be born into some kind of story or some kind of tradition, similar like that, like whatever. You're going to be told something by the people around you when you're very young. You're going to be told a story about life and society and how it is. So I want to go back to something from yesterday's essay, and then I'm going to pick up from there. Fry talks about, he says, man is civilized by his social institutions. And those institutions provide a continuum which gives his individual life another dimension of meaning. Before he is born, he is predestined to be born of a certain race and social class and nationality at a certain point in time. Thus, before he has any personality, he has a social context. The institutions to which he is attached are mainly products of concern, and they form the complex of temporal authority. He may spend his whole life in this context, but an educated man in a complex society also becomes aware, through his education, of another kind of authority, which has only an internal or inherent compulsion. The authority of the rational argument, the accurate measurement, the repeatable experiment, the compelling imagination. So we talked yesterday about this temporal authority, which is the current system, government, state, power structure, whoever organizes and regulates the society that you live in. And then the second kind of authority, which he's calling a spiritual authority, which is acquired through education and through using your own mind, your own imagination, your reason. So we're going to talk about the the initial form of authority. And he said no society can do without temporal authority, that this second type of spiritual authority, which arises from the mental habits of the myth of freedom, is not a substitute or replacement for the temporal authority, although it is the permanent center of real authority in a civilized community, and it's independent of the temporal authority, but it still has to accommodate itself to and coexist under some kind of temporal authority. All right, so let's continue the essay from that point. He says, if our argument is on the right track so far, we get two kinds of education in life. The primary kind is an education in concern, an understanding of the axioms and assumptions on which the people around us act or say they act. It is an education in loyalties, attachments, beliefs, responses, and ideals, along with the growing sense of dissonance between professed and genuine beliefs, between ideals and realities. We study relatively little of it and get most of it out of the air from our parents, teachers, and contemporaries. But every society has ways of ensuring that we learn it, and learn it thoroughly and early, even though some aspects of it, such as the teaching of religion in a democracy, may be left to private enterprise. This is followed by a secondary education, mainly in the truth of correspondence, which is education properly speaking, and is the chief business of schools and universities. From the universities in particular, the concern of the educated minority, which is centered on the myth of freedom, leaks out to society as a whole. But whenever the sense of concern receives a shock, whenever the sense of a solid social order that we accept and go along with is weakened, we realize how primary social concern is. If concern is damaged, that damage must be patched up first, no matter what happens to the virtues fostered by reason or evidence. This seems to be the kind of situation we are in now. Okay, let's explore that a little bit. So you have this secondary type, you have the first type that you just kind of absorb ambiently from the people around you. He says your parents, teachers, your contemporaries, your peers, media, etc. And then you have this second type of education, which is formal and specialized, which is designed to educate you in the truth of correspondence. And remember, those are the myth of freedom, and those are the mental habits of what he calls a writing, counting, and measuring culture. And what do they teach you in school? They teach you reading, writing, arithmetic. That's all designed to help you discover and critically evaluate and judge for yourself whether a truth corresponds to actual reality or not, which is in our modern day and age is the scientific worldview. And he says that these universities, remember that the myth of freedom is the property of an educated minority in any society. And you have public school and then at the university level. And that is centered on the myth of freedom, the myth of observation, objectivity, tolerance for multiple different opinions, versions of reality, because nobody knows the absolute truth, and we figure it out and explore it through dialogue, and tolerance for the individual. But he says whenever the sense of concern receives a shock, whenever the sense of a solid social order that we accept and go along with is weakened, we realize how primary social concern is, and that's the situation we find ourselves in today. Now, this essay was written in 1970, but I don't think that we are less in that situation than we are now. We're probably more in it. There is the sense that the stories that we were told and tell ourselves as a nation, as a culture, as a society, and I'm talking about like Western, not even just United States, but I'm focused primarily on the United States. Fry himself was Canadian. Those stories are not holding up to reality. They're not holding up to our ideals. They're not holding up to our goals, our visions, our promises, etc. And so it doesn't matter. The myth of freedom is secondary to that. He says, If that's not patched up, if that's not restored, if the myth of concern, some sense of a common shared narrative that holds the people together is not repaired, that the virtues fostered by reason and evidence, those not secondary values, but those values of reason, experimentation, evidence, etc., that he says forms the basis of that spiritual authority, that those are not going to be relevant or have an impact. So the establishing a sense of concern is primary and foundational to any of the virtues that emerge from this myth of freedom. And he's I'll go on with the essay and then I'll give my thoughts on how it applies to our situation today. He says, in North America at least, most of us take in, through the pores of our primary education, a concerned belief in democracy as an inclusive social ideal that works toward giving equal rights to all of its citizens. This ideal, many now feel, was kidnapped at the beginning by a social movement which was really oligarchical in tendency, based on various forms of exploitation, including slavery and later racism, and hence exclusive, which built up a hysterically competitive economy of a thunderous cannonade of advertising and other forms of systematic lying, and finally began to spill over into imperialist crusades like the Vietnam War. The result is that many people, especially in the under 30 age group, feel alienated from their own society to the point of what is sometimes called an identity crisis. We're looking at the breakdown of that myth of concern, the erosion of trust in the system, and I hear it from both sides. I hear it from the left, I hear it from the progressives, I hear it from the woke patriarchy, the imperialist capitalist system, I hear it from the right, the feds, taxation, you can't trust government, the system is corrupt, politicians are lying, etc., etc., etc. There's distrust and alienation in both sides from the central story about our government, what it is set up for, what it's designed to provide, how effectively it's providing that for the people, how much you can trust, etc. He says, as a result, there has been a strongly revived sense of concern, which finds much of its focus in the universities. The universities are the social centers of the myth of freedom, and are by necessity devoted to the virtues of the truth of correspondence, including objectivity and detachment. These are felt to be insufficient virtues in the face of a direct threat to human survival. And hence there is a strong desire to transform the university into a society of concern, like a church or political party. The reason for this curious and confused situation is that education itself during the last century has taken on many of the features of a myth of concern. Compulsory and universal schooling combined with the attempt to instill certain social attitudes as part of the educational process have turned the schools into a kind of secular church. Now here's the part where I think he's a little optimistic and a little outdated. At the university level, the distinction between the two types of education is more clearly understood. The attempts to make it a society of concern are resisted. That, I think, is no longer true. It may have been true in the time that Fry was writing this essay. But I think at this point, we even see this explicitly in, remember that Smithsonian put out those guidelines for white supremacy, whatever, and things like objectivity, rationality was all part of it. Even the values of the myth of freedom, the values of objectivity, the values of critical inquiry, the values of reason, the values of evidence are now being cast in mythological terms of societal concern as part of the oppressive system. So these values that the university was designed to protect, and remember, a university has actually three purposes. One is the transmission of a tradition or set of values, intellectual but also social values, The other is research, investigation into the truth of correspondence. How does the world work? Understanding the things around us. And the third one is to improve society and make it a better place. I think the mission of understanding the world, the research with objectivity, detachment, has been displaced by a need to repair this sense of societal concern that has become so damaged over the decades. He takes it all the way back to the Vietnam War and before. We can certainly say post World War II. The excesses of capitalism, the military industrial complex, everything about our government and society that people no longer trust and feel is excluding or leaving out or working against certain members of it instead of that ideal of equality and inclusion that was part of the story or myth of democracy. And so until that gets repaired, that these secondary educational values that we normally turn to the university for are going to be displaced, and the university itself is going to take on, as he says, the features of a secular church or religion or political party. And we see that happening in the maybe some of Donald Trump's latest efforts and executive orders will help curb that and turn it around. But I definitely over the last decade or so, I've seen it in the universities. Where it's the universities are now propagating or transmitting a very specific social mythology that's not based on the truth of correspondence. It's based on a vision of society that people would like to live in, which is part of the myth of concern. And the reason for that is part of the ideals of the democratic vision of the myth of concern, they feel like has been compromised or has become faulty or fallen short. So they are now transmitting a revised or what they see as an improved version. It's an attempt to restore that myth of democracy and lean heavily into the inclusion and equality part, but they're calling it equity because they feel like that initial myth is not addressing the ideals that it was set up to transmit and support. And so until we reestablish some kind of societal myth that most of America can, or the world, the Western culture can accept and abide by, some kind of narrative that ties us together and resonates and doesn't create this sense of alienation and mistrust. Until that happens, people are not going to care how the world works. They're not going to care about reason and objectivity and this other stuff because the need to repair some kind of societal myth of concern is going to trump that. It's, pardon the pun, and it's going to get prioritized over the attempt to understand the world as it is because people have a need for some kind of mythological or visionary truth more than they have a need to understand the world as it is, which is and has always been the concern of only an educated minority. So until we reestablish some kind of societal mythology and restore a sense of societal concern, a myth of concern, what Fry is saying, what I also agree with, is that these rational values of critical thinking, which democracy also, as part of its myth of concern, kind of built in the an emphasis. It includes the myth of freedom within the myth of concern. Until that's reestablished, I think reality and how reality actually is going to take a back seat. So people need some kind of mythical or imaginative truth before they can focus on how things actually they are. And without that, the sense of being lost, alienation, grievance, I think is too great to allow the mind to fully focus on any kind of critical examination of reality and the external world as it is. And I'm thinking of the Evergreen situation in the Evergreen documentary. And if you haven't seen it, Benjamin Boyce's channel, he did a whole series on it. It shows exactly what's happening in our universities where The traditional values, the traditional intellectual values of reason and evidence are being literally displaced. Like the students took over the university and started demanding all of these social changes, and they said, we don't care about the white truth, the white concepts of truth and reason and evidence and objectivity and all of that. We want this societal sense of inclusion to be established here. Um, oh, Daniel Barry, happy Thursday to you too. All right, I think I'm going to drop the link and open up a panel. So next time I do this, I'm going to pick up some. And remember, when the myth of concern, the dominant myth of concern, the stories that rise up when it stops working, the stories that rise up to take its place become revolutionary myths of concern. Because our entire tradition in Western society of the myth of concern, starting with Judaism, which developed into Christianity, which was the dominant myth of concern for many centuries, is a tradition of revolutionary myths. And so we're going to look at some of the revolutionary myths that are rising as candidates to kind of take over, displace, replace, or restore, or become the dominant myth of concern after or as a result of the sense of the breakdown of the myth of democracy. So we're going to look at revolutionary myths next time. And a lot of them are arising in the universities because that is, I think because it's the university's mission to ensure the values of the myth of freedom, and the myth of concern has become so subjectively damaged to people in their own mind, their own sense of things, that the universities themselves, until they can restore some kind of myth of societal concern for themselves, I think they're not even going to be able to pursue the mission of the myth of freedom until that happens. So a lot of these revolutionary myths and these attempts to restore concern are happening in the universities, and we'll look at those next time. Okay, the panel is open. Come on up. Let's get this started. And let's see. I'm sorry, I'm doing social media. I'm getting incoming transmissions. Oh, hey, Shelley. Um, Thank you. I'm trying to help people get their story straight so that when we're all these stories we have going, this is the age of narrative. So we have all these narratives zipping around, competing and clashing with each other. And if we can have some way to be clear about like what narrative is what, we might be able to work our way through our current quote unquote crisis. Plus it helps in the panelverse too, because a lot of diverging narratives show up here too, and people talk past and against and over each other. I'm just trying to do my part to keep truth straight. I'm since the universities are not doing it, I think individual citizens are beginning to take over that role for themselves, and we have the technology to do it now. So that's what that's all about. Um, Plus, it gives me a chance to work on my presentation skills, which is one of the things that I'm hoping to get out of Toastmasters. I glanced at the news earlier. I did see about the plane crash and the helicopter, but then I also saw a lot of political stuff about Trump this, Trump that, hearings, confirmation, and that's all just noise to me right now. So I don't really have a lot of political commentary today. Hopefully we'll get a panel. I'll keep it going for another half an hour or so. And if we don't get a panel, I can wind it down and do some more of that game later, which I'm making a lot of progress at. I made a major breakthrough in the actual mystery today. So I have a lot of leads to follow up. And one of the best parts is that lieutenant that's with me all the time is off doing an errand on his own. So I get the whole game to myself for a while without him hanging over my shoulder. We'll see if that turns out to be a good thing or a bad thing. So, all right. Well, I don't really have anything. I'm just hanging out at my usual time for whatever you guys want to talk about, whether on panel or in the comments. I'm trying to think. I had the job called me. I have to go in and do a drug test this week, and they're wanting to bump my start date up. It was going to be like 3 weeks before I start, but they said they want to bump it up earlier. So that'll be good because I'm ready to get started doing something productive. And so maybe I'll be working in the next week or two. That would be great. So my goals right now, other than the same online goals that I've had forever, which is grow the channel, grow the community. Um, I guess that's pretty much it. It's all tied together. The channel, the Discord, the community. Outside of that is to start working and try to find some in-person community. And I'm making progress on that too. Moose, what's up? Are you off today? I hope so. It'd be good to see you with a day off now and then. How is it going? Hopefully, is it still, are you still living the dream life? Oh, is it like work or around the house work? If all goes right, I'm gonna be starting my. I'm getting back into the working. Well, that's yeah, that sounds perfect for the role that you're in. You're the go-to guy. Right. I hope they're paying you what you worth. I'm gonna be entering the world of, well, I guess you could call it corporate. To me, just having any kind of job is kind of corporate. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna be entering my foot in that world from the very ground level. But I've done it before. It's so long. So it's gonna all have to come back. I think the last time I worked a retail job was Christmas of '08, '07. I had just moved back from Vegas to New Orleans, and I took a seasonal job at Pottery Barn at the big mall um, in one of the New Orleans suburbs during the Christmas rush. And that was really the last time I worked retail. But I mean, I've done it before. It's not, I don't think it's going to be that hard. It's helping customers find what they need, answering their questions, keeping the stock updated. Customer service, that's what I like, interfacing with the public. So, and it's something that I'm going to be able to go and do and then leave at work. It's not going to be anything I have to take home with me or stress over, hopefully. It's really going to come down to the office politics, the group dynamics, the coworker dynamics, the supervisor dynamics, etc. Social dynamics. That's always the make or break with me. Are you cooking anything today? What are you making? It's good to see you. It's been kind of slow here lately. It's the same. We have our regular crowd that hangs out. I wonder, I was reading, a friend of mine had made a post about he thinks his channel got shadow banned, and he was given all the evidence for it and with screenshots and stuff. But I wonder if there's a way to find out, because I know on Twitter there was a website you could go to and you could put your channel in, and it would tell you if you were shadow banned or not. But I wonder if maybe I could be shadow banned, and that's why the algorithm's not pulling people in. And for the video game, I started putting hashtags and the title of the game in the episode titles, because somebody said that might help the algorithm too, for people searching for that video game. So we'll see. I'm not really that numbers focused, although I would like to get to 1,000. Um, I just focus on giving a good panel. So once I'm still, my Toastmasters registration is still pending. What does that mean? Bumps one of your live streams? Oh, you mean? Oh, wow. I appreciate that. Um, you mean like if you does it? You talking about my channel specifically, or anybody's channel? Like if somebody goes live more than once a day, they only promote one of the live streams? How does it determine which one? So I could be hurting myself by doing this video game 2 or 3 times a day. Because if people are getting that notification, but also I go live at the same time every day as well, and most people know that. So I try to make myself pretty easy to find for the people that want to be here. Like I open a space, and there's many reasons I open it for, but every one of those reasons, if people need any one of those things, conversation, support, they have a topic they need to get off their chest, whatever, they at least know where to find me at the same time every day. Now that might change once I start working in my schedule. My schedule is going to vary by week. You get like different hours each week, and so I might have to start moving the stream all over the place, and may not be able to be as consistent. And I also when I go live, I put it on social media periodically as well. But to me, the important people show up, like the people that really matter and are like keeping the community going. Those people are pretty good at showing up regularly. So as long as that's happening, I don't really stress over the rest of the stuff. I'm not a numbers guy. I'm not a clout chaser. I'm just trying to keep this little project going. I'm like the little engine that could. I'm just trying to keep this one little train car on the track and moving up the hill. It started as a hobby. It was just a hobby channel, something I did for fun. And it still is. I had a very wise mentor tell me one time that when something stops becoming fun, you should stop doing it. And this has not stopped becoming fun. So it's still a hobby. And I still do it because I find it rewarding. And so it's easy to focus on that. Just keeping it going for people that need it. And the coffee I went to yesterday was it's kind of like an in-person version of this. I used to be a meetup organizer, and I would do coffee meetups. Those are real easy. That's a really good, easy, basic activity if you're just looking to bring people together regularly. Just having a weekly coffee somewhere. I had one in Vegas, I had a group in New Orleans. I had one in Seattle for a while when I first came here. Hey, Sean, what's up?
So,
How's it going? How are things over across the sea?
raining.
Oh, you're coming in very scratchy. You said it was raining?
Oh,
Yep. Can you hear me?
yeah, it's raining and cold. Yeah, that's fine. I was listening to the Robert F. Kennedy um,
Oh yeah,
questioning,
what's going on with
and
that?
when he's getting asked a lot of questions about vaccines, what else? Farming, and I agree with some of the stuff he's saying, like diet. Not really about more meat. I would disagree with him on that. And the vaccine stuff, I'm like, I'm pretty skeptical. What do you think?
What was he saying about the vaccines?
Well, they were asking him about his history about being a vaccine kind of skeptic and other conspiracy stuff like 9/11 denial
Oh, I didn't know he was. I knew he
and
was
all
kind of
that.
a conspiracist, but I didn't know
Yeah,
to what
the kind of
extent.
stuff that my family are all into. Uh, that I used to be into as well. So I'd say it's quite common nowadays, understandably, because the humans are a bit mad.
What got
We're
you
not
out
very
of it?
rational. The internet, looking at different points of views, but I'm still a bit theories and something. What
Well,
things that I'm
yeah,
not
I
sure
was about
about?
to say with climate change, you still seem to be.
Well, climate change, I think, is not a conspiracy. It's a
Well,
true
no,
thing.
but nobody thinks their conspiracies are conspiracies.
Well, you think it's conspiracy then? Is that what you say? Implying?
Um, I it depends on what specific one. I think it's because it's the future, it's speculation, and I think some people can get a little. They can catastrophize or get like they can get carried away with the narratives. So it's not a conspiracy in the sense where there's this like sinister group pulling the strings to make a certain outcome happen, but it's a conspiracy theory in the sense that I don't think a lot of it is. I think more. I think it's grounded more on fear and the imagination than fact.
Yeah, but the fear comes from facts, like scientific facts. I mean, I was just reading an article there in the Guardian today that there's a big reduction, like 80% reduction or something of birds in the tropical forests in South America because of the heat and other reasons. So I read a lot of stuff on the Guardian about climate change, YouTube videos. I research on it, and it's not very popular because nobody here wants to hear about the bad stuff of climate change. Climate change is not very popular on the internet because
I think it's
it's
not. It's not very popular. Not because people don't want to hear about bad stuff. Because Lord knows they seek out and expose themselves to plenty of bad stuff. I think it's they're skeptical of some of the claims behind it because the two reasons: the evidence is scanty, and there's so in some areas there's not scientific consensus enough to make people trust it. And we're talking about the future, so it's all predictive. It's like it's like weathermen arguing about what the weather's going to be like next week. So it's not like something you could point to in the present. It's something that they're saying is gonna. It's like more prophecy.
yeah. All I know is that climate change is happening, and it's going to make the weather weirder. Okay, some scientists that
Well,
Europe's
see,
going to get
you
colder.
right now you're saying what's going to happen, but
I'm
that's not
just saying.
something
I'm
you
just saying
can
the
claim as fact.
what. Obviously, the climate is going to change. It's some places going to get better, some places going to worse.
But
But then
that's always
overall,
happened with the climate.
yes, I know that climate changes all the time, but this time it's changing the fastest it's ever have. Well, up one the fastest like the last time the climate changed this fast was when the mass extinction happened. So scientists are saying now that we're in the sixth mass extinction because it's not only by the climate, it's also about the biodiversity collapse. So like there's 4% left of wild animals left. We've taken 94% or 96%
That
of
sounds
all the
weird to me.
wildlife.
So we better hurry up and get to Mars then.
Well, I wish Elon would spend all his money saving the environment and fucking Mars, because we won't be able to go to Mars at the current way we're going if we just destroy the environment here.
We're gonna need Mars. That thing you said about what is it? 4% of wild animals are left.
Yeah.
That seems
Look
very
into it.
extreme. I'm looking
Write
at it
that
right
down on the
now.
internet there.
Let's see. I'm seeing something about wild mammals making up just 4% of global mammals and the other 96% being humans and their livestock.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
But it doesn't say it's because of climate change or humans doing it.
Well, I wasn't talking about only about climate change.
Let's see, there's been a large decline, and this is from greengreengreen.org. There's been a large decline across tens of thousands of wildlife populations. Yeah, I think people hearing stuff like this don't believe that there's just this mass dying off of animals across the planet. They don't see bodies anywhere. They don't hear about it. It just seems far fetched to believe that 96% of animals are just suddenly all dying.
Well, obviously, we're the growing population is getting rid is if you want to grow the population, you have to get rid of nature, and some wild animals are faring better than others. Like pets are doing well, farmed animals are doing better, but all the wild stuff that nobody wants is going lower and lower. I'm a beekeeper, so I know about insects. Well, not as much. Like insects are going down, and they're the food chain of everything else. So if we keep at it, even if climate change is not real, let's say hypothetically climate change is not real, the other stuff that we're doing with biodiversity can cause an extinction event as well. If we keep on deforestation, pollution, over fertilization, overfishing, and all that. Which most of the biodiversity loss is caused by animal agriculture mainly,
It's caused
because
by what?
animal
Animal ag.
agriculture animal agriculture is the main cause of biodiversity loss, because animal agriculture uses like 50% of all the farmland, of all the 80% of all the farmland in the world is for animal agriculture, and it's growing. They say we're gonna need to double the food supply in the next 30 years or something. And it's because the demand for animals, because everybody's getting richer, so they want to eat more meat, and that's going to require more deforestation for the people.
Okay. Yeah, I guess most people just don't see it as a pressing issue.
Yeah, but if people were educated, if people if Bernie Sanders, let's say, wasn't president and he told people about these problems, then people would care about it. But people don't want to care about it, because if they really,
It's hard to care about something so abstract.
yes,
Like
because
in
climate
30
change.
years, people are going to need more meat. That's not an issue that's really affecting a lot of people's daily
Yeah,
lives.
it's because humans are not evolved to care about the long term, about the bigger stuff. People want to care about their small
Yeah,
stuff now. I
yeah, that makes
understand.
sense.
But if you're a politician or a powerful person, you have to care about the big picture stuff. And a lot of them are failing at that, in my opinion.
Well, um, yeah, that's I guess you could say that it's an opinion. Everyone's going to have an opinion about politicians, but that's different than the climate change debate. Like what politicians should be focusing on or prioritizing. And you believe they
Well,
should be
obviously,
looking 30
Trump
years into the
Trump thinks
future
that
about
climate
the
change is
meat
not real.
problem.
Climate change is not real, according to Trump. So he's not going to take care of it at
Yeah,
all.
but I don't think
It's like,
I think even people that support Trump are not going to look to him for scientific authority.
yeah, but he does have scientific opinions that are wrong. So that's going to have
Yeah,
an
but
effect
he's
on the
who
climate.
cares? He's not a scientist. I mean, I'm certainly not going to.
Yeah, but he's going to affect the scientist with his. I heard he's going to stop the funding for climate science or something. He's going to reduce the funding for a lot of science stuff. That's great.
Well, we don't. He hasn't done anything yet, so.
Well, I think look into it. I think he's going to cut a lot of government jobs, and they're going to be science as well. Didn't he cut the funding of National Health Alliance NIH, the vaccine producers there? The
I
conspiracy that
think
they made.
is that part of the pause, or was that something separate?
It could be part of the pause. Sorry, I'm not.
Because he undid the pause.
The NIH. The I think
Oh,
they
he
made.
did a communication freeze. Is what he did to them. Not the funding, but he froze their communications. But it also says it's. I also read where that's common for new administrations to come in and do during the transition period.
All right. So, what do you think about Robert F. Kennedy yourself?
I don't know much about him. Do you think he's going to get confirmed?
It looks like it, but he did two interviews there with the senators, 2 days, and then I'm like, if he's right, he's gonna cut. He's gonna make a lot of changes. I hope he's right, but I'm skeptical that a lot of the changes is gonna be that good.
Which ones have you worried?
The vaccine stuff mainly.
What's he planning to do?
Well, he might make people not have to take them, or like do
Oh, like
studies that.
get kids in school where you have to get vaccinated
Yeah,
to
he's
go to
gonna maybe
school.
reduce the amount of vaccines, or tell people you don't have to take them, or and that might lead to get more people sick or something. I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know
He
how
could
he's
be
going to
right.
pull that off really because those vaccines, I don't think anyone's want to is going to want to go back to life before those vaccines.
Well, he has a
Now,
history of
in my
vaccine
day,
denial.
there were only a few you had to get. It was like mumps, measles, maybe a few others. And now I hear there's a lot more.
Yeah, like 70 or something.
Oh Lord, I didn't know that much.
I think so. Yeah.
Let's see, I'm looking it up now. Why is it so hard to find a list? Hepatitis, rotavirus, DTaP, pneumonia, polio, COVID, influenza, MMR, chickenpox. Oh, they have a chickenpox vaccine now. That would have been helpful. My whole family caught chickenpox. And now I have shingles. I'm, that would have definitely saved us a lot of trouble. Hepatitis A. You're
Yeah,
right.
and he
There is a
also
lot
talked about
more.
vaccines causing autism or something.
It doesn't. That happens in the womb. That happens developmentally. Hey, Hebrew.
Well,
I hope all
well
is
no,
well
he,
with you
he
too.
RFK talked about it. He was
Yeah,
skeptical. He
that's
was saying that.
ignorant. That's already been debunked. So I don't know what's up with that. If he's saying that, he's just ignorant because autism happens before the child even comes out of the body, and the vaccines happen after the child is born. So the autism's already in the child by then.
Yeah, I agree with him on the. I heard that America is way more sick than before. I mean, they have like way more diseases nowadays. Like young people now have way more chronic diseases than back in the day, and it's probably because of diet, chemicals, and maybe side effects of medicines. But I'm not an expert on that. And lifestyle, like not exercising.
I didn't know we were more sick.
Oh yeah, the autism has increased from one in. They talked about it, or RFK talked about it, and he
That's the
said,
sickness is autism.
"No, no, that's an example." But autism
Oh,
has
okay.
it was like 1 in 10,000 before, and now it's 1 in 35.
Well, part of it is identification. People are identifying it more. Like in my generation, nobody was even identifying autism, and now they know what to look for. So the rates are going to go up just because they're identifying it now.
Right.
So it's hard to say if there's an increase in actual cases or if there's just an increase in which cases are being identified. But I have heard the Silicon Valley phenomenon where two autistic parents will have kids and their kids will have a higher rate of autism because of the heritability of it.
Yeah, isn't Elon a bit autistic?
Yeah, he's a spurg.
He's what they call them, Asperger's.
Well, they don't use that anymore. They don't break it down into that classification system anymore. So now they just call it all autism spectrum. But yeah, he's definitely on it, or what I call neurodivergent, because then you could throw in ADHD and giftedness and other forms of brain differences, other neurotypes.
And do they get do autistic people get medications for dealing with it? The extreme ones, for example.
It it depends. It depends on the individual situation because it's so varied. It's hard to say. If you there's no medication for autism itself. If you medicate at all, it's for specific symptoms that are giving them trouble. I know probably more so with ADHD than autism itself. Although maybe they might give them something for anxiety or something like that. Because autism is
Yeah.
more of a it's cognitive. It's processing. It's awareness. It's what your brain is, the type of information your brain is taking in, and what it's doing with it, and or not taking in many cases. And so there's not a lot of medication that can do anything about that. Hey, Vinny,
Right.
what you doing? So it's just whatever symptom they're trying to, like hyperactivity, anxiety, maybe depression in some cases, although I don't see depression as necessarily related to autism. Um, you know what? I'm going to ask the AI. That's a good question. What are autism medicated for? Co-occurring conditions, specific symptoms that interfere with daily life. Um, ADHD symptoms, stimulants for focus and impulse control, sometimes medication for anxiety and depression, aggression and irritability, sleep issues, sometimes seizures if epilepsy occurs, and sometimes for obsessive or compulsive behaviors. And it says medication is usually a last resort after behavioral strategies and environmental adjustments have been tried. Hey, Helena, welcome.
Right. Well,
Like if I had an autistic, I don't take any medication at all. If I had an autistic kid, I would I would rule out every other type of intervention before I medicated them, had them on some kind of medication. And often just getting them in the right environment where they can thrive is a lot of times all it takes.
Now, if RFK Jr. is correct on everything he says, that's probably going to be the biggest scandal in the pharmaceutical industry. Like they're going to get in trouble, and
What is he saying that
and the food industry. There's a lot of
what's he saying?
industries that, if he is correct, will be in trouble. Like will be sued or something. Well, he's saying that vaccines are not all vaccines are good for you. That a lot of the food additives, the chemicals in the food are not good for you, which I agree with him on that. On some of the chemicals they use are not good. The processed food. So he's probably going to do like taxes or regulations or something, or sue some people.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. I mean, it's no surprise that chemicals are probably not good for you, but I mean, sugar's not good for you, alcohol's not good for you, nicotine's not good for you, caffeine's probably not great for you. So, like, just because they're not good for you doesn't mean there's anything nefarious going on.
Would
Like, I
you
don't know
agree
how you
with?
would sue over, oh, they used a chemical that's not good for you.
Would you agree with taxing sugar, saturated fats, and salt?
I think
All the bad products.
Seattle actually has a sugar tax. I think they put one in. Let me see. Um, I don't eat sugar myself, so just selfishly, it's not going to make a difference to me. So why should I care if they tax it for other people or not? But there's probably larger principles behind it too. Sweetened beverage tax, they sure do in Seattle. Um, it was designed to result in the improved health of Seattle residents by reducing the sales and consumptions of sugary drinks. Yeah, I don't like this. This is social engineering. They're trying to engineer people's diet and nutrition economically. And it's going to really hit the poor people because the rich people are still going to be able to drink whatever they want.
Yeah, but don't they have regulations on cigarettes and alcohol?
Yeah. Like you have to be a certain age to buy them. But you want people to be a certain age
Well,
to buy Coca-Cola?
they say that sugar is just as addictive as cocaine. So if we
I don't
regulate
believe
it
that
a bit,
sounds very far-fetched to me. Sugar is as addictive as cocaine.
well, I could be wrong. Sugar and fat makes you obese, but the two ingredients by themselves are quite addictive because they're humans are evolved to eat high fat, high sugar. Fruit and fatty foods were the main calories.
Well,
But
if
I'm
that's
just
what
saying
we're
that
evolved to eat, why interfere with it?
because we're eating too much of it with
So
too
according
much
to who? Who
abundance.
decides? That's what I'm saying. Who decides what when I'm doing too much of something?
Okay, so let's say you're the health guy in politics. What would you do to improve the health of the country? Because I think America is very unhealthy compared to other rich
Why do
countries.
we need? I have a medical doctor. Why do I need the government improving my health? Why do we need a health guy at all? We have. That's what doctors are for.
So you wouldn't regulate the food industry at all?
Well, you said health. Like, how would you improve people's health? Regulating the food industry is something different than health. We have the FDA to make sure that our food is edible and all that. But that's not related to telling me what to eat and when I'm eating too much of something. That's not what the FDA does. It
Well, we
doesn't tell
have
you when you're eating too much sugar.
okay, fair enough. But you wouldn't agree with taxing the most bad for you food
No,
products?
no,
All right.
no. I think it's a form of social engineering. I think it's a form of Karening. I think adults should be able to eat whatever they want as long as if it's on the market, they should be able to eat it. If they want to drink soda and eat potato chips and get fat all day, they have the right to do that. And that's between them and their doctor. It's not the government's role to step in and interfere with that. They're making a choice to
Do
do that.
do private insurance companies make you to pay more for insurance if you're unhealthy lifestyle?
I don't know. I know that when I've had insurance before, I've had to do like I think one time I even had to take a test, a smoking test, but you have to declare if you're a smoker or not, and I think it changes your premium depending on that. So I think they do it for smoking. Yeah, that's a good point. McDonald's fries. Yes, I don't want anybody telling me I can. Not the government's business how many fries I want to eat.
Well, to be fair, the government does regulate a lot of stuff in pharmaceuticals and in the food industry. I
Right, but that's
understand what you're
not
saying.
diet.
You don't want the yeah, you don't want extra regulations that will tax the most addictive foods that are making us unhealthiest.
I don't want them regulating my diet. I don't think that's
It's
the place
it's
of
fair
government.
enough, but it's funny that in America you're the most unhealthiest in the rich countries. Okay, you spend the most on healthcare, and you're the most unhealthiest because you have freedom. I'm just saying that compare America to Japan. Japan has only like 4% obesity, and America has what, like 40% obesity. So that shows you it's not about the government; it's about the culture. It's about the people. It's
It's
not about
people
the
that
government.
they're like that because they want to be like that. They can easily not be like that if they wanted to. But in America, we have the freedom to eat that stuff.
But you
Does the
understand what?
government regulate the Japanese diet?
Yeah, but that's why there's people like Robert F. Kennedy. He makes a lot of money on all these problems of fear of health stuff. Like I heard that the pharmaceutical industry, 50% of all the profits of the pharmaceutical industry come from the US, and the US was only like 4% of the world population.
I don't know anybody that doesn't know that eating a bunch of hamburgers and drinking soda all day long is not healthy. I like people we know that and we do it anyway. It's not we're not ignorant. It's not like Americans don't realize that their diet is not healthy. We don't care. We want to eat that stuff anyway and we have the right to do that. We don't want anyone telling us what to eat.
Yeah. Well, if I was a private insurance company, I would uh I would interview you every 5 years about your health, and then if you're unhealthy, like obese
Well, why
and
not
diet
just
wise,
go
I
off
would
of my
increase
medical
I would
records?
increase your premium for that.
You don't have to interview me, just use my medical record. If there's a health issue or something, then go off of that. But don't go off of just what I tell you I eat and then penalize me if it's not causing any medical
Well,
problems.
well, your diet affects your health, and if
That's
you're
what I'm saying.
obese,
That's
you're
why
more
you have
likely.
medical records. If it's not affecting my health, then there's no reason to penalize me.
So, do you think it's already happening that the private insurance people are already paying? Already, yeah, it probably already happens.
That I don't know. Honestly, don't.
Well, obviously, if you get more sick, your premiums go up if you're asking for insurance all the time.
I really don't know. Mine is employed. Like all the insurance I've had was taken out of my paycheck from an employer. So the amount stayed the same every month that it took out. But then I don't have any. I didn't follow any of those categories either.
Fair enough. But anyway, so that's it. I don't know how much else to talk about. Um,
Well, we'll see if he gets confirmed. It sounds like you think he probably will.
he probably will, but if he does everything he wants to do, he's probably going to be the guy who's going to change things the most. For the worse, I hope for the better, but I'm thinking it might be for the worse. But unwittingly, he's not. He's doing things wrong, but badly, but I don't think he was aware that he's doing bad things. I don't think he's malicious. Like he knows he's doing bad things, but he's just ignorant.
Well, and even with Trump, they it's people think they have a magic wand that they can just wave and make whatever they want to happen happen. He still has to go through the process, and there's a ton of people around him that are gonna tell them when they're doing something stupid that they're gonna have to convince. So I'm not worried that he's gonna become a king or a dictator and just be able to do whatever he wants with our health system. That's why we have a system in the first place. It's not just one person controlling everything.
Yeah, he's probably gonna do studies on vaccines, and he's probably gonna get corrected on a lot of things. He's gonna say that's not possible and all that. So he probably won't be as influential as he wants to be. Same with Trump. Trump wants to do a lot of things, but he probably won't be able to do half the stuff he promised.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that happen his first few years. That's why I don't know. That's why I don't understand why people have the fear that they do. Because we've already watched plenty of curbs on Trump's power before. In fact, even some of the executive orders he just got through writing, some judges have already been overturning, like the birthright citizenship thing. So we, when I look at the system and the system of checks and balances that's designed to regulate it, I see it working. I see every time I look at it, I see it working over and over and over again. So people that are looking at it and panicking because they're scared it's not working, I don't. We're not looking at the same thing. We're not looking at the same system at all. Either they're not seeing what I'm seeing, the parts that are working, or they're seeing it and panicking anyway.
Yeah, but Trump thinks there's a lot of things wrong in the system too. I think there's things wrong in the system, but for different reasons. But both sides of the political aisle thinks that there's something wrong with the system, but there's different reasons why. And I agree with some of the stuff Trump says, mainly maybe for illegal immigration, but for a lot of other things, I disagree with him.
Well, that's fair. I think that's normal.
I think the tariffs thing. I think the tariffs thing. I'm not sure if it's going to be bad for the economy. I'm not an expert, but I heard economists say that the tariffs might be bad. Might be not as good as he thinks he is. It is.
I
So he
know
might
that he
change his
did
mind
them
on that.
his first 4 years, and there was some controversy over it. I
Do you think?
honestly don't know either how the tariff thing.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to do a lot of tariffs. Uh, I think Ukraine is probably going to. They're going to have to give some territories to Russia. I don't think Ukraine will be able to take back their territories there they lost. But if they want to take back the territories that they lost, they're going to have to lose a lot of men, and I don't think they're willing to do that. Or maybe if they just got loads of jets and loads of army from Europe and America came to Ukraine, and the jets just came in and bombed the flip out of the Russians in Ukraine, then maybe that'll work. But that don't happen.
It's hard to say. They've been that happened in what 2021. It's been over 3 years. They've been holding their
Yeah,
own.
2022
Oh,
or 2021, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's like 4 years, 5 years, 3 years. Yeah, yeah. Russia are like the old style empires of like the 17th century. He's copying how empires used to do it in the 17th century. Well, we're all kind of doing it, but he's doing it the old-fashioned way with war. But America kind of does it too with other.
we're
Everybody's
trying
sort
to
of doing it.
take territory that doesn't belong to us. Well, he wants
Well,
Greenland and Canada and all of that stuff.
yeah, Panama. Yeah, we're kind of doing the same stuff from a long time ago, but different ways. Like more peaceful ways, economically mainly.
Oh.
What do you think about world government and like in the future, like the whole world being one government in the future? Do you think that's gonna happen?
I'm not going to be around. It's not going to happen in my lifetime. Probably not even in the grandchildren that I'm not having's lifetime. I think that's generations and generations away. Humanity has not evolved to that point yet.
Yeah, I don't think humans will be able to solve the current problems we have now already before. Well, maybe we'll need a world like I asked AI about how to solve climate change and the environmental problems, and the AI said we need more intergovernment cooperation, which kind of implies more unity in the world.
Well, we have to get China and India and the other big polluters on board, and if they're not going to do anything, then I mean, there's nothing that our efforts are going to do.
Yep.
So if climate is a global problem, then it's going to take global cooperation, and if we don't have that, just like in COVID, like all the countries had to come together and more or less cooperate on some kind of response to COVID. And if one country let it spread all over the place, then that would not have helped anyone, any of the rest of us. And so it's the same with climate change. If you have enough people that are not going to be part of the solution, then it's pointless to try to do anything. If it requires a global solution and you don't have that global cooperation, I don't know what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I think most governments believe in climate change. The reason why I think that they haven't done much to solve it is because they know that if they want to solve climate change, their economies are gonna have to be reduced. They're not gonna be able to grow the economy as much. So they always kicked the can down the road. They've done the easy stuff first, like renewable stuff, pollution regulations, but the hard stuff like getting rid of the emissions of the heavy industry and transport. Well, transport is quite easy, electric cars and stuff. But the heavy industry like cement, steel, what else? Construction. Yeah, yeah. That is very hard to do sustainably. And agriculture as well. Well, agriculture could be done easily, but steel and cement is quite hard to do with renewable energy. It is happening, but it's not going fast enough, as fast as the other industries. Oh yeah, and electricity production in like China, they build a new coal power plant like once a month or every 2 weeks or once a week or something. China, India as well. Coal production is still going up. Renewable energy only supplies like 4% of all the electricity in the world. 4% of all the energy, sorry, of the world. 80%, no, sorry. 80% of the world's energy supply comes from fossil fuels. 20% comes from nuclear and renewables. Oh, and biofuel, biomass.
What are they? What are and I don't know how any of this works, but what are they supposed to do about all these problems? Like it's not like these companies are just polluting for the fun of it. It's a byproduct of the necessities that it takes to manufacture the product. So what are the governments supposed to do about these companies or to these companies if they
Well, a
need
lot
to
of these
do this
problems,
to
I
continue
think,
to serve
I
like
think,
produce because they produce products that keep modern civilization going.
yeah, I think renewable energy and nuclear energy. If you want to replace all the fossil fuel energy in the world with renewables and nuclear, you're going to require loads more copper, loads more lithium, loads more cables, loads more land to put the renewable energy, like windmills, Solar panels. All the roofs of the houses in the world are going to be covered with solar panels. The oceans, a lot of the oceans are going to be covered with windmills. Uh, there's going to be nuclear power plants everywhere. Like, there's only 400 nuclear power plants in the world right now. We're probably going to have to, like, times it by, I don't know, 50 or something. And that's got another problem.
But
But
how is
I,
that going to solve like pollution from manufacturing, the
well, that
emissions?
energy that comes from the renewables will be able to replace the fossil fuels. But I think it's too late now, so we'll have to reduce our consumption. So we'll have to reduce our consumption. Well, anyway, when you use renewables, let's say hypothetically, we replace all the fossil fuel consumption without reducing your consumption with renewables, you reduce the energy demand anyway because renewables and nuclear are more energy efficient anyway. You don't lose as much energy through heat and other ways. I don't know. It's the physics, the science of it. I'm not an expert on.
Why do you think they aren't doing that?
Well, they are doing it. Like people like Bill Gates are funding stuff like that, nuclear stuff. The governments. I mean, uh, a good example is France. When the oil crisis happened in France, when the oil prices went up in the 70s, France used its taxes. Like they have high taxes in France. 50% of the government, 50% of the economy is because of the government. So they use a lot of their taxes in France to build nuclear power plants. So they built like, I don't know, 50 nuclear power plants in like 30 years in France from the 1960s to the 1990s or something. So if you wanted to have like let's say hypothetically a World War II style effort, let's say climate change is really bad, it's going to kill loads of people if you don't solve it. Let's say we did a World War II style effort and like used a lot of our money, tax the polluter companies, let's say, and use that money to do like renewable energy, nuclear, regenerative agriculture, fake meat, fake animal products,
No one's eating
planting
fake
loads of
meat.
trees.
No one's going to want fake meat.
Yeah, it's true. Planting loads of trees, planting loads of wildlife, protecting wildlife, using the government. But
But
I would be,
like what I'm saying is, even if France is doing this, unless all the other countries do it, you're still going to have the source of the climate problem. So why does it
well, that's
matter
what I'm
if
saying.
some of the
I'm
countries
saying
do it if they're not all going to do it?
France is a good example because they reduced their CO2 emissions from the electricity sector by building loads of nuclear power plants because nuclear doesn't release CO2 as much. So if everybody built loads of nuclear and
But
renewables,
that's what I'm saying. If everybody's not going to do that, so your solution
what,
depends on people doing something that they're not going to do.
okay, hypothetically, let's say Trump says climate change is very real, and I want the private sector to do it, not the government. I want the private sector, the big polluter companies, to do something about it. And if you don't, well, if he doesn't want the government to do anything about it and wants the private sector to do it, um, he could sue them. He could. I mean, there's a lot of court cases now happening. Kids are suing governments. It happened in the Netherlands. It's happening now in Montana in
You
America.
think it's going to happen in China or India?
I'm not aware as much of the stuff happening in Asia, but there's a lot of people now suing governments. Like in England, people are suing governments for all the bad stuff they're doing with the environment and private sector as well.
Yeah, I just don't think that's going to do anything unless it's a global, unless all everyone starts suing governments everywhere. Like you're I don't know why people are attached to unrealistic solutions and solutions that require countries like China to do something that they're obviously not going to do. It seems like a dead end, but people keep pursuing those solutions. I don't understand the thinking behind. If this is such a crisis, why are people being so unintelligent about the solutions? To me, in a crisis, you want to do solutions that are going to actually work. You're not going to want to chase solutions that have no chance of working because the other people that need to be involved in it are not going to do it. So it's like very pie in the sky. And if we close our eyes and say magic words, maybe climate change will magically end if a few of us do this one thing. But that doesn't seem like intelligent. That just seems like wishful thinking, like a lot of hope.
Well,
Like
it's
it's like
because
feel
people.
good solutions. It's not actual get shit done solutions.
Well, I'll give you an example of solutions. There's a website called Project Drawdown. It's been researched by 500 scientists, and they give you the top 500 solutions for climate change. And there's 100 solutions for climate change.
I
And
know, but if China and the big other big polluters are not going to do them, then
yeah,
what
but
good are any
hypothetically,
of those
let's say
500?
China and India, which provide most of the stuff that we buy in the Western world. Most of the pollution, a lot of the pollution in those countries is caused by rich countries buying their stuff. We exported all of our cheap manufacturing, our polluting manufacturing, to those poor countries because in the rich countries we had protests that increased regulation on the polluting companies. So the polluter companies moved abroad to China, India, where there's less regulations on pollution and it's cheaper labor as well. So I'm just saying that if hypothetically the West did a sacrifice and reduced its standard of living, okay, its economy basically, we're not going to die. Obviously, I'm not saying starve to death, but I'm saying like reduce our energy demand. You could still reduce your energy demand and have a good lifestyle. Okay, I'm not being extreme. Just let's say hypothetically, America reduces its energy demand by 50%, and Europe by what, another 30%, and then China and India don't do anything. That reduction of economic growth and increase of renewables will make the poor countries like China and India reduce their emissions as well, because a lot of the emissions, probably like 30% of the emissions of these countries, comes from the demand from the rich countries.
That's a lot of hypotheticals. And
I
I
know.
guess that's my
I'm just
point. Like a solution that relies on that many hypotheticals doesn't seem
okay. Let's say we
practical.
follow Trump's way and say, okay, China and India are not doing anything about it, so we're not going to do anything about it. America's not do, America is one of the historically, or is currently, the second biggest polluter in the world. Historically, it's the first. And let's say America doesn't do anything about it, and Europe and China, we don't do anything about it because we think it's too hard. We don't want to do sacrifices. We don't care. We want to have fun now. We don't want to sacrifice a lifestyle
Or
now
it's
for the future.
pointless if China's not going to do anything. It's why are we going to
Yes.
sacrifice for
Let's
no
say
reason? We're going to make
okay.
all these sacrifices and we're not even going to see the result that we're sacrificing for because of China.
Okay, let's say we're like you. We're all quitting. We don't do it because China's not doing about it. Then the world is going to get worse. Climate change is going to get worse, and we're
Then
all going
talk
to
to
die.
China. Don't talk to like that's the where you need to be talking, not us.
Yeah, I'm talking to my local area first before I go to China because China are crazy. They're
But okay,
dictators.
your
They're going to
local
chop my
area
head
is
off.
saying if China does it, we'll do it. So then you have to go get China to do it, and then
Yeah, no, I'm just China are not the only player. I'm just saying that the Western world has more influence in the world than China. It's the
well,
reason
obviously not
China
because
is
we
big.
still haven't been able to get China to do it. So we don't have the
The reason
influence
why
that you think
China
we
is
do.
so powerful is because Nixon opened China because China copied. If China was communist, 100% communist, and then become capitalistic in the 70s and stayed communist, they wouldn't have their economy grow and they wouldn't be polluting. It's because they copied the Western world that they're now the biggest polluters in the world. So thank you. They should have stayed communist and poor and not pollute as much, then become capitalist or uh, socialist dictatorship with a bit of 50% capitalism.
It still sounds to me like your solutions depend on a lot of wishful thinking and not on things as they actually are.
Okay, so let's say hypothetically climate change is real. All the problems I'm saying is correct. How would you solve it?
I would get everybody on board, and if everybody's not on board, then I don't know what the solution would be. That's what I keep asking. If China's saying no, we're not interested, then I don't know what the next step is.
So you wouldn't try to do it anyway, even if everybody
No,
doesn't do
because
it.
it's a waste of it's not an efficient use of my work energy, because it's
So
not going to
you just
produce
you
the
you would just
results.
let the world collapse and say,
No,
okay, I give
China
up.
would just let the world collapse. If China's the
Uh,
one not
China is
doing it,
not the
then
only.
China would be the one responsible for the world
China
collapsing.
would not be responsible for 100% of all the problems of the world. China is only like what, 20% of the world economy
No,
of
it's
the
one of the
polluter.
bigger ones. China and India, the polluters
No,
that you're
no,
talking about.
no. The biggest polluters in the world is China, USA, India, and
Okay,
Europe.
I just said that. China. The largest
Yeah, but
polluters are China, the United States, and India. So if the United States is willing to do something, if China and India do, and China and India say no, then they're the ones responsible, not us. Like, that's what I'm saying. Your entire solution depends on you're convincing the wrong person to do something. Go convince China and India. That's where the solution is, not
yeah,
the
but
Western world.
okay, wouldn't you do it anyway? Let's say, okay, hypothetically, the West
No, not
does
if
it.
it's not going to work. I'm not going to waste my time doing something that's not going to work because these other two countries are not willing to do
No,
it.
but you still have a chance of improving the world anyway. Let's say the Western world does the good thing and saves the environment and all that, and
It
China, India don't. You would still feel better about yourself. You would have a maybe lower
I don't
standard of
care
living.
about my feelings. The climate is still going to get worse.
Yeah, but it'll get worse slower.
Not if China and India are the two other big polluters. If there's three big polluters, two of them are China and India, one of them is the US, and the other two, so that's two out of three, are not willing to do anything. It doesn't matter how good I feel. Climate change is still going to get worse. If the solution to climate change is getting the three big polluters to stop polluting and two of them say no,
Well, China and India,
then
or
the
maybe
other
like
big polluter doing something is not going to make a difference.
China, India are maybe like 30, 40% of the pollution in the world right now. The 60% is probably everything else.
It doesn't matter if they're not all going to do it. That's the point.
Yeah, but
You
the
you can't
pollution of.
have like 60% do it and 40%, because for that 40% is still going to damage the climate.
Well, no, it's going to reduce the climate by less. It is still going to be
I
bad, but
think
it's going
this
to be
is
less.
fantasy thinking, and it doesn't. I'm not impressed with solutions that involve fantasy thinking. I want a solution that's actually going to work.
So you're
And if
basically
we're
saying
still
that
going
if
to have
China
China
and
and
India.
India polluting, then the climate is still going to get worse. I don't know. I
So
don't
you're
know how
basically
you
saying
get
I
around
give
that.
up if China and India don't do anything about it, and they're 40% of the problem, and if they don't do anything about it, then we should do nothing about it. Is that what you're saying?
If China and India don't do anything about it, is the climate change going to is it going to get solved? No, they're going to still
Well,
pollute and
if
cause the
60%,
damage to
I would still
the
do
climate
it
that you
if
say is causing the
I would
problem.
still I would still do it if 60% of the problem is solved.
But it's an all or nothing problem. Either the climate gets fixed or it doesn't. It's not. You don't have like 60% of climate change. Like, it's not. I, it seems like you either solve it or you don't. It seems like an all or nothing deal. Either you fix climate change and you set the world back on a healthy course, or the climate gets worse and the consequences of climate change get triggered and happen to all of us.
Yeah, it's like your health. I mean, if you improve your health by 60%, that's still better than nothing.
Not if you're still gonna die from whatever the disease is.
Yeah, but you're
Like,
gonna die slower.
okay, China is 34%. The United States is 12%, and India is 7.6%. I'm looking it up on Wikipedia. So China is more than double the United States. So your 40% figure is wrong.
Yeah, but look at the historical per capita emissions.
It sounds like China is your solution goes through China.
Yeah, look at the per capita emissions of the per capita emissions. America is up there, but I know that Qatar and the Middle Eastern countries have the highest pollution per
I'm
capita.
looking at per capita. China's still at the top. Let's see, 13.83 is the US plus 9.2. It still looks to me like unless you have China on board, you're not going to get what you want. So I don't know why you're
Yeah,
harassing all the people except for China when that's who you need to get your answer from.
but
It
the
makes no
problem is
sense. It
that
makes you look stupid, and it makes you look wishful thinking, and it makes you annoying for bothering the people that are not even the ones contributing to the problem when you could be going bother the person that is.
the
You're
the
not
thing
going to
is
win
that
people over to your cause if that's your solution.
I told you already that if the Western world reduces its consumption of Chinese products, then the pollution of China will probably be reduced by 30% on
Well, it
that
doesn't
alone.
even seem like the Western world is willing to even do that.
Well, that's what I'm saying is going to need to happen if you want to
Well,
solve
it may
climate
not have
change.
that. That might not be realistic. That might be
Yeah, that's
unreal.
why I
Just
think
like you
that's
don't
why
want
I'm a
people
doomer.
to give up people are not going to give up their sodas and their hamburgers. They're not going to give up their Chinese products either. So if that's
Yes,
your
that's why I think we're
solution,
fucked.
it's not a realistic solution. It fails to understand modern consumer psychology.
Yeah, and that's why I think the human race is fucked. That's my honest opinion.
Yeah, I don't think it means we're fucked. So, and that's just something you have to judge subjectively. There's no way to test that. So you can have a very cynical outlook because people drink soda, eat hamburgers, and buy Chinese products that the human race is doomed. I don't draw the same conclusion from those data points. I think we're gonna
Well,
be fine. I think
you're not
people drinking
obviously looking at the
soda is
science as
is
much as I
we're
am.
still gonna be fine if people have their Cokes and Pepsis and soft drinks
Well, no, the fertility rate has gone down by 50% in men
because of
in the
soda.
Western world. Yeah, look at the reduction of fertility there, just for the crack.
Because of soda. Because people
No,
drink Coke.
no, it's because of obesity mainly, but look at the reduction of fertility in men. Look
See,
at
you
that.
keep shifting the argument all over the place. Now we're on fertility is going to doom us.
Well, that's
It's
another
like you. It's
problem.
like you want to. You want the doom first, then you try to justify it with something. Just
Well, the
you could just
solutions to
relax
climate
and
change,
say, and not be so
the,
cynical.
the solutions to climate change will also solve other
Soda
problems
is
as
not the
well.
end of the world. Obesity is not the end of the world. Pollution is not the end of the world. None of
I
that's the end
heard
of the
somewhere,
world.
I heard somewhere that the fertility rate has gone
Well,
down a
you might
lot
have heard
in the
wrong.
Western
You
world.
you might have been lied
Well,
to.
not only in the Western world, all over the world. It's probably mainly to do with plastics.
Well, good. That'll be less people drinking soda and less people polluting.
What do you want to do about the problem of microplastics and plastics in
I don't
general?
want to do anything about it at all.
Okay, so you just want to be less
I
upset.
don't think most people care about microplastics, and until you can
Okay,
get them to care,
okay. If you were the government, would you educate people? At least educate people on the
you could
climate crisis.
try. I don't. You could try. How would you educate people on microplastics? Because I'm a pretty educated person, and I'm not even interested in learning about it.
Okay, let's say I was the president of the world. I would educate people on the problem, and I would not try to regulate it at all. I would just let the private sector
But
do it,
what
and
if
I was
they're
just
not interested? Like, what if you try to educate them and they're just not interested? It's
well.
boring. They don't.
I'd say okay, then it's your
Microplastics are
fault.
boring. They don't have the attention span for it.
Well, I'm a nerd. I'm an autistic nerd,
I
so
know, but
I
most
care about
people are
these things.
not.
Well, everybody's special, you know.
So if your solution depends on educating the average ordinary person on something they're not interested in, again, I don't think that's going to be a realistic solution.
So, what is your solution?
I
If you
don't
believe,
have
let's
one.
say,
I
let's
don't
say,
see the problem as dire as you do, and
okay,
I
let's say
don't have a
hypothetically,
solution for something that I don't think is a big problem to begin with.
okay, let's say hypothetically, you believed in all the problems that I told you. What would be your solution?
I'm tempted to not let you keep using these hypotheticals, but if I suddenly decided that climate change was a huge crisis, I think education would be my start. But again, that's going to have a very limited effect. If it depending on the interest level of the subject matter. I don't think it's a problem. So I can't give you that hypothetical. I can't put myself in the mindset of somebody who thinks something is a problem that I don't think is a problem. I can't I can't give you a good answer to that.
Okay, let's say in 5 years' time, something really bad happens in climate. Will you feel guilty and say
No.
sorry for being in denial?
No. And why is that your question? Like
No,
why
because
is
I'm
my
just
feeling
saying,
of guilt why would that be the first thing on your
would
mind?
you feel, okay, sorry, if the climate is gonna get bad and you feel the effects personally, will you feel guilt and say sorry to me
No, I
or
don't
to
think I'm
anybody?
doing much. I have one of the lowest carbon footprints of anybody I know. I don't think I'm doing anything to contribute to the problem.
But you
If
will change your
China's the
opinion.
number one polluter, I don't think anybody from the West has anything to feel guilty about.
China is not the okay, China is like number one now,
34%,
but
and
it's
the
only
U.S. is at
recent.
12%. I just looked at the numbers.
Yeah, but it was 12% for like a long time. I'm just saying, per capita, historically, the Western world has
I
been
don't
a
care
bigger
about
polluter.
historically. I care about right now.
Yeah, but the emissions
Most people
accumulate.
are not going to feel guilty about something that they don't feel like they're contributing to as much as other people are. I'm not a big
Historic,
corporation. I'm not a manufacturer. I'm not China. I'm not any of the people that are causing this to happen. I have nothing to feel guilty about.
historically, per capita, the Western world has been the biggest polluter in the world.
I wasn't, so I don't feel guilty. I do not feel guilty. I'm not going to feel guilty. I don't know why you're
Yeah, you're
trying to
probably not
make
going
me
to feel
feel
as
guilty.
guilty as
It
much,
seems
but I
manipulative,
do.
like you're trying to manipulate me into doing something you want me to do by
Well,
playing on my
fear is the
guilt, and
biggest
that makes me
motivator
not
in the
trust
world.
you. That's going to make
Fear,
it harder for you to fix climate change.
see, you're using fear to make pretend that I'm wrong, and I'm using fear to make pretend that
I'm not
you're
using
wrong.
fear. I didn't try to make you
Well,
scared of
you
anything.
fear that
I'm trying to
the
get you
my
to not be scared.
you you fear that s- my beliefs are wrong, and I fear that your beliefs are wrong. So
No,
this is a fear thing, and
I don't
obviously
fear
we're gonna
that you're wrong.
clash.
You're ascribing an emotion to me that I don't feel, and I'm not using. So I guess if you're going to help climate change, and if your ability to solve climate change depends on your ability to persuade other people, you're going to have to get a better psychology of how people work and their emotions.
So with your psychology knowledge, what so you're saying that education is the best way, but then you say that education is probably not going to work as much as you want. So you're basically implying that if climate change is real and education is the best solution, you're basically saying that humans are doomed because we're not going to. A lot of us are not going to believe it.
I
Is that
don't
what you're
think
saying?
we're doomed because of climate change. I don't think climate change is at the point of being doomed.
Yeah, but hypothetically, let's say it is
I don't.
existential.
I'm not doing hypotheticals anymore because they can take hypotheticals can take us anywhere down any rabbit hole that you want us to go, and I want to stay in reality.
Yeah, I
So
like
right now, in
hypotheticals.
reality, I don't see climate change as a doom level issue.
Well, you should look into the science, man. You should look more into the science of it, and
None
then
of that
change our opinion.
science can tell us what's going to happen in the future until the future gets here.
Well, I look into the science, and it's not looking good. So that's it. I'll let you go. I've pissed you off enough, and I've pissed myself off enough as
Okay,
well.
yeah, you sound more pissed off than I am. I'm not as worked up about climate change.
Well, that's because you're not aware of it. But anyway, I'll see you again. Bye.
All right. Take care, Sean.
Bye.
Yeah. We watch different YouTube channels. That's what it comes down to. You watch things that have a story going on in your head that you buy into that I don't. I don't have the same story about climate change. I think we're going to be fine. And I think if it gets to this doomsday event, we're going to know it definitively beforehand and come up with a solution if it gets that bad. Right now, it's still too vague and too abstract and too much speculation. And you're relying on speculative science, and I like to rely on science in the here and now. This is like growing up with the hurricanes, where they tell you like maybe I don't know half a week ahead of time that there's the possibility of a hurricane forming on the horizon. And nobody panics at that point. You might start kind of preparing a little bit to evacuate if you have to or stock up on things, and then you watch more of the news, and a few days later they tell you, oh yeah, it did form into a storm, and then they give you an idea of where it's going to hit, and even the day it makes landfall, it doesn't always hit where they say it's going to hit. So I think we're at the point where a hurricane hasn't even formed yet, and you're already panicking and thinking that we need to execute these emergency plans, and I just don't even see where the hurricane has even begun to form. So we have different like levels of threat awareness around this. And you're listening to people that are crying gloom and doom and telling you this is on your doorstep, and I look at my doorstep and I don't see anything that looks like what the climate people are saying. And so I'm not panicking. I'm not in a climate panic at all. It's going to happen slow and gradually over generations. There's going to be plenty and plenty of generations to help solve this. It's nothing that you and I have to solve right now in 2025 before we die, or else the world is doomed. That's not how climate change works. So there's people working on it. If down the road it becomes a problem, there's people laying the groundwork for it. And again, I'm way more interested in realistic solutions. And if China's not part of that, then it's not a realistic solution. Because climate is global, it's worldwide. It's affected by what everybody in the world does. And if part of the world is doing one thing and the other part is still doing the thing that's contributed to the problem, then you're still going to have the problem. I think people, yeah, Jax, I think people see it as a bomb. It's a ticking bomb that's going to go off at any second, and that's not how climate works. I think even climate scientists will at least agree to that. That it's a long, slow process of change over time. I don't know. I don't know what. I imagine it's wherever he's getting the story from. Like the right now, because I talked today, my topic was on how we get educated in different stories, and the traditional way is through the school system and universities. But I think in the modern world, it's internet, it's social media, it's YouTube, it's Twitter, it's blogs, it's Tumblr, it's wherever you get stories from that make sense to you that you internalize. And if people present something sciencey enough, scientifically enough, it can convince a lot of people. Because I think there's faith in science to help us find truth and understand the world, and science does a pretty good job of that in some domains. But what they're looking at is the future, and the future is an unknown. So you're going to there's always going to be an element of mythologizing when you're faced with an unknown, of using your imagination to create a story of what that unknown is. And so even something like science, when it's looking that far into the future, is faced with an unknown. So it can't be as empirical as if it's facing something here in the present right in front of you, like an atom or a chemical compound or a molecule or something like that. So that's my thoughts on it. That's what I could figure out is maybe going on. It's a subjective panic about the future based on scientific speculation. Like the weather. People watch the weather and panic, and not everything the weatherman tells you is going to happen ends up happening. It's probabilistic. It's probability. And so what science can give you about climate change in the future is probabilities. And some people put a lot of faith in those probabilities, but it's faith, it's not knowledge. And then they have the emotions correspondingly in reaction to whatever narrative that they're building on this faith. That's the best I can do right now, I guess. All right, I think I will wrap up and go about my day. And I'll be here tomorrow. I'll probably, yeah, the usual time, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Oh, we'll find something to talk about. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for coming up. And I'll talk to you later. He'll see.